During a basketball game in 2008, Romikia Sims met James Lee. James was working as a security guard at the event, and after exchanging a few glances, they struck up a conversation. In the days that followed, they spent more and more time together, quickly developing a deep connection. Before long, their relationship blossomed. Both Romikia and James lived in Clinton, a small town in Maryland with just over 40,000 residents. Despite its modest size, it was home to their budding romance. By the end of 2010, Romikia discovered she was pregnant. At the time, the couple faced financial difficulties. Romikia was still living with her mother, Vasha Sims, while James shared a small apartment with a friend. Even so, they embraced the challenge with optimism and excitement. In August 2011, their son, Ji'Aire Lee, was born. Ji'Aire was a lively and energetic child, always eager to play and spend time with his family. In 2013, when he was 2 years old, James managed to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in La Plata, another small town in Maryland. At last, the family could live together under one roof. Ji'Aire adored his older cousin, and the two spent countless hours playing soccer and video games. Life seemed to be falling into place. However, by 2014, cracks began to form in Romikia and James's relationship. The tension between them grew until they made the painful decision to separate. Romikia remained in the apartment James had rented since she had nowhere else to go, while James returned to living with a roommate. Despite the split, he continued to support Romikia and their son financially whenever she needed help. Romikia worked as a sales associate in a store while also attending university, determined to one day become a teacher. For a while, things seemed stable, but then Romikia lost her job and everything changed. With no steady income, she struggled to make ends meet. Although James helped as much as he could, it wasn't enough to cover all the expenses. The stress became overwhelming. Soon, Romikia began hearing voices. Her once bright and determined spirit was clouded by fear and paranoia. She became convinced that someone was watching her, following her, waiting to harm her. She claimed that her doorbell rang frequently, only to find armed figures waiting for her outside. On one occasion, she frantically called her mother, crying that men with weapons were outside her apartment, trying to kill her. Vasha rushed over, but when she arrived, the street was empty. There was no one there. Another time, Romikia called her stepfather, terrified that intruders were lurking outside her home. Again, when he arrived, there was no sign of anyone. Concerned, the family requested security camera footage from the surrounding area, hoping to catch a glimpse of these mysterious figures. But the footage revealed nothing. No strangers, no threats. It was clear that Romikia was experiencing terrifying hallucinations. By February 2015, her condition had worsened. One night, she called James in distress, saying there was someone inside her apartment trying to harm her. Her words were jumbled and incoherent. James, unable to leave work, called Vasha and asked her to check on Romikia. When Vasha arrived, everything seemed normal, except for Romikia herself. This time, she struggled to recognize her own mother. Seeing the severity of her daughter's condition, Vasha took Romikia to the hospital. After a series of evaluations, doctors diagnosed her with paranoid schizophrenia and depression. She was prescribed medication and released with strict instructions to take her medication daily to manage her symptoms. Knowing her daughter needed constant supervision, Vasha invited Romikia to move in with her. Romikia, now unemployed and unable to afford rent, agreed and brought Ji'Aire along. However, Vasha wasn't living in a traditional home. She was staying at the Deluxe, a roadside hotel in La Plata. The transition was difficult. Neighbors at the hotel reported frequent heated arguments between Romikia and her mother. It wasn't uncommon to hear them yelling at each other. Worse, some neighbors claimed Ji'Aire was mistreated. Police records even documented instances of Romikia being violent toward her mother. Despite their strained relationship, Vasha never stopped trying to help her daughter. But in February 2015, after another explosive argument, Romikia decided she couldn't live with her mother any longer. She packed some belongings, took Ji'Aire, and left, hailing a taxi to James's apartment. Vasha watched them go but was deeply concerned. Since Romikia hadn't informed James of her plans, Vasha called him to let him know. Hours passed, but Romikia never arrived at James's apartment. Worried, James got in his car and retraced the likely route from the Deluxe Hotel to his home. That's when he made a horrifying discovery. Romikia had suffered a hallucination mid-ride, believing she was being chased. In a moment of panic, she opened the taxi door and jumped out, clutching Ji'Aire in her arms. James found them wandering near a highway in the freezing night. Ji'Aire was barefoot, dressed only in thin pajamas, shivering uncontrollably. Romikia's belongings, including her purse, were scattered along the roadside. James rushed them both to the hospital. There, doctors confirmed that Romikia had not been taking her medication for a long time. She was given medication, and doctors once again urged her to take it consistently. That incident was a wake-up call for James. He realized that Romikia's condition posed a real danger to both herself and Ji'Aire. In March 2015, he filed for full custody of their son, arguing that Romikia was mentally unfit to care for him. The hearing took place in April. During the trial, James presented evidence that Romikia had been hospitalized twice due to her schizophrenia, both times while Ji'Aire was in her care. But the judge remained unconvinced. Instead of granting James full custody, the court ruled that both parents were fit to care for their child, enforcing a shared custody arrangement. Ji'Aire would spend 1 week with his father, then 1 week with his mother. James had no choice but to accept. On May 18, 2015, Romikia stopped taking her medication again. Later, she would explain that she believed the medication wasn't working, so she saw no reason to continue. Her mother didn't realize what was happening. Until it was too late, the voices returned along with intense hallucinations. On May 20th, Romikia began speaking nonsensically, claiming that people had visited the hotel and given both her and Ji'Aire a pill. That same day, she told Vasha she was taking Ji'Aire to the pharmacy for medicine, and then to a fast food restaurant before heading to the park. At 11:15 a.m., Romikia arrived at the park with Ji'Aire. She placed him in a swing and began pushing him. Hours passed. Night fell. Vasha called to check in, and Romikia assured her everything was fine, but she never returned. 2 days later, on May 22nd, a man walking through the park noticed something deeply unsettling. He had seen the same woman pushing a child in a swing for days. It was odd, too odd to ignore. He called the police. When officers arrived, Romikia was still pushing Ji'Aire. The temperature had dropped below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The little boy was completely still. As officers approached, they quickly realized the unthinkable. Ji'Aire had passed away. Romikia told them that voices had instructed her to keep pushing her son until someone else arrived to take him off the swing. If she stopped, she believed something terrible would happen. The autopsy confirmed that Ji'Aire had died from dehydration and hypothermia. The story shocked the nation. A mother, lost in the depths of her illness, had unknowingly let her child perish. Romikia was hospitalized until her trial in February 2016. She pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter, but due to her severe mental illness, the judge ruled that she was not fully responsible. She was released under strict conditions, including mandatory mental health treatment and supervision. She is prohibited from being near children unsupervised and must undergo regular evaluations. To this day, Romikia visits Ji'Aire's grave, bringing him toys and singing lullabies, lost in a sorrow she can never undo. Please support me. Subscribe my channel.